We're running a few minutes behind today, so I'm going to try and be as brief as I can. As my good friend Noel Crum knows, sometimes that's a little bit difficult for me. I'd like to welcome you to the 7th Fire Summit that we've been able to have here in our region. I'd also like to welcome all the folks who are joining us virtually today from across the country and around the world through theholler.org. Last spring, when we held this same event, we had about 17,000 people who watched live. We expect about that same size crowd today. I also want to recognize our national board members who are here with us today. We have a team from Galt School District in California who has traveled across the country to join us, and we appreciate them and the other invited guests and folks who are here with us today. I have to thank several people. First, I'd like to thank Roy Harlow, who many of you know is with Intermountain Cable. They made it possible for us to be able to have Wi-Fi here in the building today, which makes it possible for us to live stream this event across the country and around the world. Also, Joseph Smith with Light the Night, who has provided all of the Mondo boards that you'll see throughout the building during presentations. And I have to also thank the KVEX staff who has worked a lot of long hours for a fairly long time in order to be able to pull this together. But most importantly, today is about excellence in education and the educators who make that possible. Right now, if you would, I would like for all of those folks who are doing presentations today to please stand up. And let's give them a round of applause. I think as you go through the day and you hear the presentations, if you can't hear them all, they will be posted on the Holler in archive fashion, and that'll take us about a week to get all of them up there because there are well over 100 that will be done today. But you can go back and review those and take a look at the posters that are around the back of the room. There are amazing things that are happening in classrooms across this region. It truly is a renaissance that's taking place. And for those of you who are brave enough and daring enough to go above and beyond what you have to do in your job, we salute you and we celebrate the work that you do. 3 reminders for today. 1, please pay attention to the ladder of feedback. We really would like for you to be able to contribute feedback to those folks as they do their Ignite presentations, to help them look for connections, to network, to be able to find additional resources that can help support the work that's going on in our classrooms. Also a contest. We will be offering 4 prizes at the end of this event, and they're both having to do with Twitter. If you don't use Twitter, you may want to if you want to be in on the competition. But if you do use Twitter, there is a hashtag for this event that's on a poster over here. It's hashtag ARIFire. For the adult category, whoever sends the most tweets about this event and uses the hashtag ARIFire, you will receive a prize. Also, whoever sends a tweet that is retweeted the most will receive a prize. For the students who are in the audience, the same categories. Whoever sends the most tweets that are on the ARIFire link, and whoever has a tweet that is retweeted the most. So that's a good competition, and some good prizes will be awarded for that. Lastly, as far as reminders go, April 11th is the next Fire Summit, and we hope to see all of you back here on April 11th. That's going to be a really exciting day because we will be able to see the results of what you have proposed today. And as you do that in your classroom, we'll be able to see what's going on with that. Next, it's my great pleasure to introduce Judge Timothy Feely, Deputy Secretary for the Cabinet of Health and Family Services. Judge Feely has a distinguished career in public service that includes service in the United States Army, where he attained the rank of Major. Assistant U.S. Deputy Attorney, he has had a private legal practice, has been a school board member and a state representative. Judge Feely will be with us today, and he'll be talking about a situation that faces us all that we have to be able to come to grips with in order to improve our communities. If you will, put your hands together with me for Judge Timothy Feely.
Jeff talked about all the hashtag stuff. I don't Twitter. I'm too old for that, so I won't be winning your prize today. I want to thank you all for inviting me here today. Wish you good morning. Thank you for inviting me to beautiful Pikeville and having an excuse to get out of Frankfurt for a little while today. That's been wonderful. It's been a tough 2 months in our country. We've had hurricanes in Texas and Florida and Puerto Rico. We've had a deranged individual in Las Vegas shoot up a nice concert of people, and we have wildfires in California that have just devastated communities. All of those are horrendous situations that got a lot of press. But if you put all the lives lost in all of those together, it won't match the number of Kentuckians that are going to die from opioid overdoses in this year. We have a crisis on our hands, and I'm here today to talk a little bit about what we need to do. It's working great, Bruce. What we need to do as a state, as a community, and as individuals to help minimize the problem. I don't know if you can see that very well, but this is a slide from opioid deaths in 2015, the last ones that's available for national. It's grown fourfold in 16 years, and if you see the map on the side, the epicenter of opioid deaths is right here: Kentucky, Ohio, West Virginia, and up in New England. Kentucky deaths from opioid overdoses reached 1,404 last year. We lose approximately 4 Kentucky citizens a day to the opioid epidemic. And now the opioid epidemic, of course, is heroin and other type drugs. The heroin has been coming in over the last couple of years. If you have a chance to read the book Dreamland, it's by Sam Quinones, Quinones with a Q. It details how this problem got to be where it is. It details that the drug companies sold the opioid drugs to the medical profession and claimed it was not addictive. And they're right, it's not addictive for about 70% of individuals. But about 30% of individuals are genetically predisposed to have some addiction to it. And so it was oversold by the drug companies, and the market came in from Mexico, where a cartel was bringing up heroin and going not to the big cities, but to the smaller communities, and they were following people to their medical things and offering the heroin at a less expensive cost than the prescription drugs. And it hooked a lot of our people in it. Sam Quinones' book, Dreamland, is a good expose of how that happened, and it's all centered around Portsmouth, Ohio, which is right where Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia come together. This map shows the number of opioid deaths in 2016 by county residents, and if you see from the map, it looks like Jefferson County, Fayette County, and Northern Kentucky are really the biggest problems. But if you go dig into it a little bit further and look at the number of children who are born addicted to drugs and the number of opioid deaths per capita, the real problem is in Eastern Kentucky and Northern Kentucky. And that's where we have to address our efforts. Now, I want to particularly look at how schools can help in this area. This slide shows in 2015, 2016, the number of deaths from opioid overdoses. And you'll notice it went up from 72 to 90 within the teenagers, the students who are going to our schools. Now, the deaths from opioid, it's usually not just from heroin. The problem is the heroin is being cut with fentanyl and now carfentanil. And these drugs are available from China. The drug pushers are buying it from China, bringing it in and cutting it with the heroin to make it stronger. But the problem is it's being bought off the street by people who don't know who's doing the cutting. And so often the mixes are such that the overdoses are coming from fentanyl and carfentanil, which carfentanil itself is 50% more powerful than the heroin that they're cutting it into. Another thing to notice from this slide is that this is not just a youth problem. The number of Kentuckians who died in 2016, over 290 from 25 to 34, and what really surprised me when I saw it was 409 from 35 to 45, and 45 to 54 was 321. This is not just children, but it's adults. It's members of our communities that are getting hooked on these drugs, and we need to work on getting them done, getting them away from that. Again, looking though at our children, we do have a problem with parents who are using the drugs. And we are the largest, we are number one in the country in the percentage of children who have parents who have been or are incarcerated. 13% of our children in Kentucky have one or both parents who at some time have spent some time in jail. We have over 8,500 children who have been removed from their homes and placed in the care of the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. That has grown over the last couple of years by a factor of probably 1,500 to 2,000 per year. Most of that growth is from the opioid epidemic. It's when we have parents who are using the drugs and we have to take the children away to keep them safe. This slide shows the number of newborns who are born with neonatal abstinence syndrome. In other words, the children are being born addicted to drugs. And again, it's going up and up, and we need to put an end to that. One other risk factor we have from the opioid epidemic is the sharing of needles by people using the opioids has become a spike in both HIV and Hep C. About 2 years ago, there was a small community in Indiana, Austin, Indiana, where over 200 people were affected with the HIV virus in a community that only had about 3,000 people. Just way off the charts, and it was all looked back to, and the cause of it was one person with HIV who was sharing needles with another, and it went on and on and on. And so we're looking at some needle exchange programs that I'll get into in a bit. In that slide, there's the stars represent communities where we do have needle exchange programs in place. So at the Cabinet, we're working on a coordinated system to address the opioid problem. The Cabinet for Health and Family Services is working with the Cabinet for Justice, the court system, the education system, and coming up with some statewide answers to how we can address the opioid problem. The opioid problem is a top priority of Governor Bevin. We've been meeting regularly with the other cabinets to come up with a statewide plan, and have gotten some grant monies from the federal government to do that. Our first goal is prevention. Let's go back one. First goal is prevention. First and foremost, we need to work with the medical community and make sure that they're not over-prescribing the drugs. We have one of the best systems for monitoring the prescriptions out there. It's called the CASPR system. We recently built that up a little bit. The CASPR system reports all prescriptions that are being done by doctors, and we can look and see if somebody's out doctor shopping, looking for extra prescriptions. We can also see which doctors are prescribing more than the norm, and we can address that in the medical community. We're also increasing our state analytical capability to look at where overdoses are taking place, because occasionally there'll be a pocket of overdoses in one community, and that's an indication that some bad drugs were brought into the community, and so we can address them by doing the analytics that we're working on. We're increasing public awareness with advertising campaigns, by speaking engagements. The governor has a program called Don't Let Them Die that if you want to get on Facebook or Twitter and look up Don't Let Them Die, it's the governor's program on how to address the opioid thing and how to handle it when you have somebody who's getting an overdose. We also have a very active program now addressing people as they're released from prison, giving them Vivitrol, which is a drug that keeps them from wanting the drug for a while, and hopefully using that as a model, because unfortunately, our biggest rehab center in the state is our prison system. We received a grant from the federal government, and we're concentrating much of that grant on care for pregnant women and recent mothers. That's a population where if you help one, you help two there. And because of the growth of the children who are being born with NAS, it's an area that we need to focus on, and we're doing a lot there. There's a lot of programs. There's one down in Corbin, there's one up in Fayette County, where we actually provide a home for the mother when she's pregnant, and for up to 2 years after the child is born, that she can live a drug-free lifestyle and raise her child herself. There's also an idea called the ANGEL program that we're trying to work out region by region, hopefully statewide. The ANGEL program is where somebody who wants help, who needs help to kick the addiction, can go to a police station and won't be arrested, but will have to turn in their drugs and their paraphernalia, and they'll be put into a treatment program. And that's going to be rolling out here real soon in different areas and hopefully statewide soon. Another area that we're working on with our grant funds is peer support. We have found that the recovery is much more effective, and kicking the habit is much more effective if you have somebody that's been through it themselves and can help you through it. I've known from my days on the family court bench, from my days in Frankfurt, that this opioid addiction is a tough one to kick. Once someone is addicted to opioids and heroin, they'll do anything. They'll lie, they'll steal from their grandparents. They'll do anything to get that next fix because it takes over, it consumes their body. You see the pictures of people who are passed out in their cars and their children are in the back seat. They don't care about their children. All they need is the next high. And so recovery is important. There has to be a period where they dry out and then a period where they re-educate and not use it. And many, many people fail in recovery and have to come back. Sometimes it takes 2, 3, 4 times going through treatment for it to finally work. But we found that peer support during those periods of time when people want to slip back has been very effective, very important, and we've been putting that in as part of our grant statewide. We're also addressing treatment facilities by making them more effective. One of those is in our Medicaid waiver that the governor has put forth to HHS to allow more payment for Medicaid for treatment facilities longer periods of time, because it's definitely needed within the state. In the area of harm reduction, the major thing here is what's called naloxone or Narcan, and that's a drug that can be administered to someone who's having an overdose that will immediately arrest the overdose effects. And we have been making that available to first responders throughout the state, and also to schools and anyone who might be likely to have overdose people in their place. My son is a fireman for the city of Louisville. He's been on the job 3 months. He's already brought 2 people back with Narcan injections who were overdosing and would have died otherwise. It's effective to bring people back, but what we have to do is once people are brought back with Narcan, we need to get them into treatment. Too often people will get a high, they'll overdose, they get a shot of Narcan, they'll stand up and walk away. And I've heard situations of police officers frustrated because they've administered Narcan 2 different times on the same evening to the same person to keep them from coming back, keep them from overdosing. For educators, what we like in working in partnership is to work with you to address the problem in the communities we're there. One of the best ways that you can do is educating your students, and there I see a lot of students here educating your peers, is that one source of the drug very often is from family members. If mom or dad or grandma or grandpa has a prescription, sometimes we have children who are going into the prescription cabinet and taking those pills. We need to make sure that everybody who's got a prescription and has young children with access is aware that that's a problem and could lead to an addiction. In my own community in Oldham County, several years ago, the high school students were having pill parties where they would go into the medicine cabinet home, take out a whole bunch of pills, throw them in a big bowl, and then at the party they'd be taking pills that they don't even know what they have. One of our young students overdosed and died at a pill party because of pills stolen from relatives. We need to make sure that that's not available to them. We also need to engage students as much as possible in the harmful effects of the opioid addiction. And one of that way is by promoting resiliency among the students. There's a program that we're working on called Sources of Strength. And if you want to learn more about it, you can go to Sources of Strength at ky.gov. It's a program that looks at both bullying, drug use, and other problems that youth have, and it shows how to put together a program in your community and your school to address the program. I'll always remember a teacher that I worked with once. I was on the school board in Oldham County, and the school board was voting for mandatory drug testing for athletes because it was allowable under a Supreme Court decision. And there was a lively discussion of the need for that. And this teacher, who was a very good teacher, came up to me and says, we don't need to drug teach our students. We need to look them in the eye, and you can know if a student's having problems. And that's what we need to do. We're doing what we can at the state level with the CASPER program, with the grants for treatment facilities and all that. But government can't do it alone. We need help from the communities, we need help from the churches, we need help from the educators. And one of the best ways to help is to look in the eye of your students. And if you see a student who suddenly is falling in grades, is suddenly missing school, is suddenly fogged up and not know what they're doing, there's a problem there. And you as an educator very often are the most responsible adult they'll see during that day. And so the best thing to do to help those children is to not be shy, not be scared of confronting them. What's going on? What do you need? Do you need help? And if you see somebody who needs help, refer them to a local community mental health center, refer them to a help center. We work with all the community health centers to get opioid addiction problems worked on, and we're more than happy to get that going. I know we're running a little late, so I wanted to cut that a little bit short. I do want to say that the Governor, Bevin, the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, the Cabinet for Justice are all working hard to address this problem, but we can't do it alone. We need your help. I'll also say, with the size of this group, there's no time for questions, but I'll give you my email address. It's tim.feely, that's F-E-E-L-E-Y, at ky.gov. If you have a concern, a problem, or some idea that you have that you think would work well in your community, drop me a line on email. I'll be happy to forward it on to the right person who can deal with that problem or take your idea and see if it can work for us. Together, we need to make this a safer, better place for all as Kentuckians. Once again, thank you very much for inviting me here today. I hope you have a great conference, a great group of speakers you have coming on. I don't want to put a downer on it on the start with the opioid problem, but it's a problem that we can't ignore, we have to work on. Thank you.